oh no, I'm like, this is America. This can't happen. And then I had a moment to gather myself and I said, okay, this is going to be my opportunity to tell as many people as possible what is happening here and that they're going to be next. They might be okay with the vaccine being forced to get that, but what's the next thing they're going to force you to do? Are you going to be okay with that?
Women are currently being erased in culture, and I want to amplify their voices and share their stories. Do I have a good episode today for y'all? If you're watching on YouTube, you notice the background's a little different. I'm actually in my childhood bedroom. How fun is that? I just got back from Washington, D.C. Maybe I'll have to do a podcast and share with y'all all about how that was. Last night, I was at a Title IX rally with Riley Gaines, Paula Scanlon, Macy Petty, and fighting back against what the Biden administration's doing on Title IX. So we'll have to have some of them on sometime and chat about that. But that's why I'm in my childhood bedroom. Got back from the airport and kind of hopped over here. Anyways, today's episode is so good. It is with Tori Jensen. If y'all have not heard of Tori Jensen, you need to go follow her. But let me tell you, if you don't know the name, you actually probably know who she is. She is the Kaiser nurse that got escorted out of Kaiser during the whole COVID situation because she would not get the vaccine due to her religious beliefs. So she filled out a religious exemption. They denied it, escorted her out of the building, and she held strong to stand up for not just her rights, to stand up for all of our rights and for all of our freedoms. That's why we have that First Amendment right, to stand up for what we believe, to speak the truth, and not have repercussions for just standing up for our values. So Tori is amazing. We dive right into the story about what went down, what was that like to be a nurse during COVID, and then get escorted out while she was willing to be there and work. But we also get into a little bit about the sports issue. Fun fact, Tori and I both played college soccer. And then we dive into what she's doing now. She's focusing a lot on weight loss, hormonal health, and because she's a registered dietitian as well as a registered nurse. So we dive right into that at the end, talk all about women's hormones, and she gives some great advice about how you can start getting your hormones in check. So with that, let's dive right in. Well, hello, Tori, and welcome to This is a Woman podcast. We are so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, as the listeners just kind of heard from the intro, you are a registered nurse, but things kind of went crazy for you in your work situation. You worked at Kaiser. So it's really interesting. Kaiser's my doctor. That's where I go. That's where my insurance is through. So I have my own kind of feelings about how they handle things sometimes, especially on women's health. We could probably dive into some of that towards the end, but I just want to dive into, before we get into the crazy, what made you decide to become a nurse?
Well, actually, my first career was a registered dietitian. And so I worked in the hospital setting. My whole life, I had wanted to work with athletes. So I played soccer in college. And my goal was, I was like, I'm going to become a dietitian. I'm going to learn everything there's about nutrition. And then I'm going to work with athletes one-on-one and, dial them in with strength training and all that. Well, I never left the hospital. And then while I was there, I said, oh my gosh, being a dietitian is really boring, at least in the hospital setting it is. I want to go back to nursing school. They only work 3 days a week. That's pretty much how it went for me. It was like schedule for schedule, basically. But then I fell in love with it, just being able to help people and just being so hands-on. And there's never a dull moment, never a dull moment. Mm-hmm. So I loved my job, bringing us up to COVID. Like it was a really challenging time. We live in California. Mm-hmm. So California was not hit so hard early on by COVID. But my husband's a first responder. So we had the challenge of we're touching COVID patients every day. Who's going to watch our kids? It was like a very weird time for us to be healthcare professionals, but we also really leaned into leaned into God at that time, just trusting like, okay, well, you've put us in this situation for a reason, and we're going to use the skills that we have, and we're going to be leaders in the community, and we're just going to show up and do the best we can to take care of people because everyone's terrified. But we know God's in control. So we're gonna push that message when we go to work.
When COVID hit, I mean, it was crazy for the whole world. Everyone's like, what's going on? Like you said, everyone, for the most part, was kind of scared at the beginning, a little confused. You being a nurse, how long were you working in the hospital before COVID hit? How many years were you in the hospital before that?
Let's see. I was about 10 years in the hospital. Yeah.
And when COVID hit, was this the first time in those 10 years you saw something like that in the hospital? Have you ever seen something like that before? What was that kind of like first month or couple weeks like, that change?
Well, I'd never seen anything like this, but in the beginning we were all joking. We were like, this is so annoying. They're talking about us having to like, clear the unit to get ready for all of the patients. We're going to have the influx of the COVID patients. And we're like just sitting around the nurse's station, just talking, this is going to be just like the flu. This is so irritating. They're making such a big deal out of this for no reason. And really it was like that, I mean, in the sense that like yes, we had some patients get really sick, but a lot of them were very manageable, ended up going home too. So in the beginning though, it was like, oh, they're not kidding about this. Like they discharged the whole hospital to get ready for the influx of the COVID patients coming. And that really did happen on the East Coast. On the West Coast, it took a little bit longer for us. Like, I don't think it was till November of 2020 October, November, where we really started being like, oh my gosh, we're busting at the seams with COVID patients. But those early days I remember them vividly because it was so unprecedented, the things that the doctors were doing, like, oh, we're trialing a new drug called remdesivir, which now, we know is pretty hard on the system. And a lot of people say, killed a lot of people during COVID, which is interesting. I gave that every day. I gave it every day. I remember when we used hydroxychloroquine and zinc and azithromycin, and then all of a sudden I showed up to work the next day and we weren't using those things. And that was right around when, Trump had talked about it being helpful. And they said, oh no, we can't use that. So like there's these like very pivotal moments, landmark moments with that whole thing. I remember I was wearing a mask the first week that COVID happened because it was still flu season and I didn't get the flu vaccine. So what's standard at the hospitals is that you are supposed to wear just like a paper, little surgical mask from during flu season, September to March. It's like a lot of time, right? If you didn't get vaccinated. And somebody came down the hall and said, a nurse leader, and said, why are you wearing that mask? And I go, what? I go, I always wear this because you guys make me wear this. I don't have the flu vaccine. And she goes, you're scaring the patients. Yeah. And I said, oh, well, which rule do you want me to follow? By the way, and this is what I said to her, and this is why, like, they were done with me from the beginning. I said, I have a personal medical reason for wearing this. Do you have any more questions? It's like, you can't ask me this stuff. But COVID made everything go out the window, right? Like, they started asking about our personal medical information and, oh, we have to do this. It's COVID. Oh, you have to get tested. It's COVID. Like, it's all these things. When you look back, you go, and now wearing masks until the end of time, right? Before she was like, you're scaring the patients. You shouldn't be wearing that. It's like, and then flipped the next week to, you're never allowed to take that thing off.
Yeah. That's so funny because it all kind of like the whole COVID situation, like almost turns into a blur. Like looking back, like when did this even start? And that period of, like all of a sudden I do remember one day where people were like, are we supposed to wear masks? Are we not? And then all of a sudden that quick switch of put a mask on and like literally don't take it off unless you're by yourself in a room to eat. Like it was such a quick switch. Myself, I'm in California, and at that time I was going back and forth between LA County and Orange County. So I was definitely seeing the differences between the counties, where one was a lot more laxed and one was very intense. And that was one of the things for me that was like, something's not right here, because if This was, if we followed the rules, everyone should be under the same, if we knew what was going on, I guess, everyone should be under the same rules or situation. But with that, you, then, so you were working there for quite a bit before the vaccine started coming out. What was the talk of the town for nurses in the hospital when the vaccine was being rolled out?
Yeah, it was like, oh, we're so lucky we get to get this first. And I was like, you guys want that? I mean, we've been working at this point. That was November 2020. We had access to it early, I think November, December. And I said, but we've been working with these patients forever and we're fine. Like I've still never tested positive for COVID, even though I had to test twice a week, so I was like, do you think we need this? And, and then I hadn't gotten the flu vaccine for years prior to that, feeling like it compromised my immune system. So I was like, I wasn't excited to get it, but there's so much pressure. I did a ton of research on it and, I have my own health issues and I was like, I don't know if this is the best fit for me, but everyone's like, oh no, you have to get it. Period. Like I worked with a ton of doctors that I respect and I'm like, do you really think that I should take the risk and get this? Or like, I don't know. I just don't have a good feeling about it. And I prayed a ton about it. I almost got it 2 different times. I think I made an appointment to get it. And I was one of the last, like everyone else had gotten it. And so you were starting to know like who had it and who didn't just by people talking. And I was very, very open about not getting it and why. Like, I don't think that we need to, because I'm like, well, we're going to have patients, and we did at the time, that don't want it and aren't going to get it. And like, we respect that, right? I was under the impression that people would respect my personal decision not to get it. And then, so that's the cognitive side of things, right? And then I have the spiritual side where I'm praying about this, and I literally got a hard no from God in so many different ways that I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, nope, it's a hard no. Your body is so well equipped to handle COVID. Like, you don't need this. And I can't speak for other people. That was my experience. But the pressure, I remember it was like spring when it started to kind of turn, and then the unvaccinated came out, right? That where everyone had access to it, the general public, right? That's like, because it was a healthcare professionals first, and then the general public got access to it. And then that term, the unvaccinated, started to be a thing. And then it's so interesting how people would perceive me differently and patients, and started thinking like, you're irresponsible. You're irresponsible. I go, no, listen, I've been in these rooms for months. I have never gotten it nor given it to anyone. So why am I being a grandma killer? Like, I don't want to hear it from any of you. You know what I'm saying? So it's very interesting how quickly the tides turned.
During that time, like you said, it literally did go to all of a sudden, like, you are killing grandma, you are killing grandpa, you hate everyone around you, is genuinely like the terms going around. Yes. And I remember I was doing school online because we got put online, and I minored in political science. So one of my poli-sci classes were talking about the vaccination. And so it was kind of like not even a mix, actually. I would say I was probably one of the only students on the online class that was like, guys, like, let's slow down on this. Like, what's going on? And I remember them being like, well, what good argument do you even have if our side is saying you're potentially putting people at risk? And I remember having to say, like, I don't want to look back 10 years from now if I'm trying to get pregnant, and one of the things you have to check off is, when I'm struggling with fertility, is, did you get the COVID vaccination? I'm like, and we don't know. We don't know the long term. So when I said that, I think some of the other girls in the class were like, oh, I'd even think about how it would affect me. I was thinking about me not getting it, how that would affect others. So I do want to dive, I guess, just right into the video clip and show that. We can kind of just go right into that day. It was October 2021 when this happened to you, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, if you guys are only listening on like Spotify or Apple, head to the YouTube channel so you can see the video. But if not, you guys will be able to hear Tori, a video of her that she posted on her Instagram, and what happened to her at Kaiser. So let's check that video out.
Escorting now being placed on unpaid administrative leave for no reason. I showed up to work this morning. Happy to work. It's the beginning. I've been since the beginning, when we didn't know what was going on, when we didn't know what kind of rooms we were walking into. That's what we do. We're nurses. I want you all to think about what matters to you, because this matters to me. Freedom matters to me. This is a slippery slope when you start taking away freedoms. I'm on the 7th floor. Are you good to walk the stairs?
Hey, I'm on the class.
We're taking the stairs. What would you do if you were in my shoes? If they were telling you that you had to violate your sincerely held religious belief or lose your job, what would you do?
I don't know. They haven't said anything to me like that, so I don't know how to respond to that.
I mean, if it's not the vaccine, it'll be something else. I'm taking a stand because I know that this is not the end, because there'll just be one other thing. I don't know what kind of pandemic it is if they're firing nurses who are willing to work. I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me. The stairs burn steam and relieve stress. Kaiser Permanente. 7 flights, that's right. I follow the rules. I park on top. That's the kind of nurse I am.
So, how did you go from just kind of being the unvaccinated person to all of a sudden being escorted out of Kaiser as you were a working nurse in a time that, I mean, as far as I remember, it was struggling to have nurses there. I mean, I feel like everything I always hear, I went to school or lived with some girls that were in nursing school. I live with a nurse now. It always seems like we have a lack of nurses. So how did that change happen so quickly?
I don't know. I still don't know, because what I said in my video, this doesn't really make sense. Like, a trained nurse willing to work during a pandemic when you need them more is being fired. This isn't lining up for me. Like, does anybody else? Like, I was just kind of posing when I videoed myself. It was really for me and my kids. I planned to post it on social media, but I never thought it would take, would catch, would pick up any speed and go viral. But I was also like, people need to know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know what's happening. Still to this day, my dad told someone the other day that I lost my job during COVID, and they go, that didn't happen. My dad was like, what? Yeah, it did. Just that the people don't really know what happened. And it was a time in history that I said, wow, I'm a part of this really illegal infringement on my First Amendment rights that I need to document. So what happened, to back up to give you the timeline, August in California, we were put on notice. You either have to get vaccinated or have to have an approved exemption by, I think it was September 30th of 2021. I submitted my exemption, my religious exemption. And I felt when I was doing it, I had this like such a surreal feeling too. Like, I can't believe I'm having to explain myself,
Mm-hmm.
my religious beliefs over something like this to work. I was like, this is just such a weird feeling. In America, other countries don't have the rights we do, but in America, we do have rights to religious freedom, right? Like, so it felt like I was being discriminated against, like to have to write a book report about my belief in God, basically. So then it gets approved, but it had preliminary in front of it. Preliminary approved. Yeah. So it was always, and everybody got that. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just keep testing until the end of time and just like have a preliminary exemption,
Mm-hmm.
And then middle October, like a week before I was fired, they sent me another email with more questions, asking for more detail about my original answers. And I was just like, see previous answer, see previous answer. Like, I was like, no, what is this? Like, who is the person judging my relationship with God? Who is that on the other end? And people are like, oh, well, you should have your pastor write an exemption. I said, why? I go, I talk to God. I have a personal relationship with God, Jesus. Like, I don't need anyone interceding for me. And I will stand by that. So if they don't like my answers because I didn't get a pastor to write my letter, well, they don't like my answers then, because that's not my religion. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have a direct connection to the creator of the universe. Thank you very much. Okay. So I submit, I write my answers, and I was at work working on a COVID unit in a leadership position. So not charge nurse, but break nurse that day. And it was around 10 o'clock, and my boss said, did you check your email? Now, I'm just going to drop some things in there for nurses, if you have any nurses listening. No, we don't check our email during the day. Okay. No, we do not. We are way too busy doing other things. So, but I just had this sinking feeling like, this is it. Cause I had kind of heard through the grapevine that this was happening to people,
Mhm.
but I didn't think it would happen to me. So I got the notice, and I immediately was like flipped out. Like the soccer girl in me just was like, oh no, I'm like, this is America. This can't happen. And then I had a moment to gather myself and I said, okay, this is going to be my opportunity to tell as many people as possible what is happening here and that they're going to be next. They might be okay with the vaccine being forced to get that, but what's the next thing they're going to force you to do? Are you going to be okay with that? So I didn't leave, and I asked to speak with HR, and I asked to speak with whoever decided that my exemption wasn't good enough. I asked to speak with people all day. I was there for 8 hours just making noise, just like having meetings with nursing administration. The union hung me out to dry, like all of all these things. And what the feedback I got from people, they're like, well, you actually have a faith, because I'm very outspoken about my Christian faith. They're like, a lot of people got their exemptions accepted, but you didn't, and you actually have really good reasons. Like, we know that this is weird. And I said, I know. Well, I would like to speak with the person who played God and judged my faith that day.
Mhm.
So I never got that opportunity. And at 6, like around 6, I think, at night, they were like, you got to leave. And I said, I'm not leaving till I talk to someone. And they're like, you got to leave. And I said, I'm not leaving. So then they had this nice man from security escort me out. He was very nice. It was not hostile at all, but people are like, how did you walk out and make that video? And I said, I've been there for 8 hours. Like, I was ready for that. I'm like, oh no, like, we need to record this. This has to be a part of history, at least if for no one else but for myself, you know. Um, and I had no idea that it would catch storm like it did. And I think on YouTube, I think Sebastian Gorka posted, I think it had like 8 million views or something on his Twitter and YouTube. It was a whirlwind for like a week, and then nobody cares about you. And it's just like right back to, great, well, what do I do now?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, thank God you did record that, because full transparency, if that wasn't videotaped, people would just be like, no, that didn't happen. You're lying. I mean, like you said, people will still say that didn't happen. You weren't fired, things like that, as you literally have video of them escorting you out of the building. I think for the people that got to see that video and all that, I mean, what a breath of fresh air it was. I mean, I know for someone like me, where I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, so when I'm sitting here saying I'm not falling in line and agreeing with all the COVID stuff that's going on, then it's like, well, you're disobeying the nurses and doctors. And it's kind of like, no, there are nurses and doctors out there that don't agree with this either. And so I'm sure for anyone that saw that video during like that time or got to hear your story, what a breath of fresh air that was. But with that, a lot of people would have just at some point just gotten in line and said, okay, fine. If you're going to fire me, I'll get the vaccination. Is this like your personality to kind of stand up to these things, or was this just kind of like the cherry on top of the cake and you're like, I'm done? Or are you kind of outspoken about just, I guess, the nonsense in general?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The way I was raised is like, you will never regret standing up for what's right. And we live in a precious country where we have to protect our freedoms. Otherwise, they'll be gone for the next generation. And so I am the type of person that's willing to say something. Like, I'm going to say something. If something's not right, you're going to hear about it. That's just who I am. And so I think God made me that way and put me in this position to use the gifts He's given me. And I've always been outspoken and like a total pain in the neck. So this was just like perfect for me. Like, great. Okay, well, this is my opportunity to highlight the illegal things that are happening in this country, and I'm going to take it. I felt so calm that day. It was wild, actually, because the Holy Spirit was just on me. And I said, I have a mission to do. I have a mission to, spread, first of all, to share my faith. I get this such a platform of saying, actually, I would like to speak with someone so I can explain to them about my personal relationship with Jesus. Can I please have that opportunity? Because you didn't give that to me. You made me write a book report. Maybe something was misconstrued, right? And just encouraging people to do the right thing, to stand up for their freedoms before they're gone. And my message to people that day was, hey, I'm actually doing this to protect your right to disagree with me.
Mm-hmm.
People forget that. I'm not saying you have to agree with me. I'm saying as an American, I have First Amendment rights like you do. And if we don't protect them, they're going to be gone. And I don't care if you agree with me. I care about protecting those freedoms so that we can continue to live in a society where we flourish because of it. So, I mean, it's been a wild ride, but I wouldn't change a thing about it. I would do it again in a heartbeat, because where God closes a door, he opens another one.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel like I would have never left there. The money was too good. We call it the golden handcuffs at Kaiser,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that was what God had for me. So I'm currently now working with women to help them lose weight and balance hormones. And it's literally the joy of my life. It is so fun. And I'm also able to homeschool my kids, have a more flexible schedule. It's like, you really have to be looking for God to use you and be open to step into what he has for your life.
That's so good. And I want to dive into more about what you're doing now. But before we dive into that day after being escorted out, what kind of came next? All of a sudden, I mean, do you get home and you were just, oh shoot, I don't have my job? What were those next couple months? How did that timeline play out? And I believe from what I've saw is you and maybe some other nurses were looking into taking some legal action against Kaiser. So how did that play out as well?
Yeah, we have the months leading up to that, I was connected with people who were in a similar situation to me. And so a lot of them still have their jobs. Kaiser did not accept my answers, but they accepted a lot of religious exemptions. So that to me, I'm just like, wow, that is who's to say my answers weren't as good as somebody else's. Anyway, so that's the whole thing. But I had a community already kind of people who were going in the same situation. And so I got connected with this medical freedom movement that I knew was there, but I was so, I was in my own world doing my own thing over here, working with kids and all that. But I got very active and outspoken about that because I feel so strongly that we need people to continue to shine light in these areas, from a legislative point of view, but also just like a grassroots and like getting people educated and understanding that they have rights, and getting them to exercise them. So I was thrust into like a media whirlwind, which was wild, like tons of people interviewing me. Like, I think the craziest one was, was it the Russia Times? I don't know. I'm probably butchering that, but it was like a big Russian news outlet. And he kept asking all these questions and I was just answering them. And at the end he goes, so wait, you had to test twice a week, but the people that were vaccinated didn't? He's like, that doesn't make sense. And I was like, I know, it's like just highlighting how much of what we were told to do, and you too, like just didn't make sense. And you kind of have to step back and go, what's happening here? And now I have a presence on social media and I'm so thankful for that, because I just nobody can tell me what to say anymore. Like, I don't work for anybody. I work for myself. So I talk about religious freedom. I'm involved with, my case personally is just Kaiser. My lawyer he's awesome. And there's over 400 of us, but there's 400 of us with just my case, but then a bunch of other cases that were filed against Kaiser, we all combined. It's a massive case, and it's going to take years probably till we hear anything about it. So we're just waiting. We have a judge, and that is going to just, that'll come down we'll just take it as that comes. I had to move on emotionally for myself. I had to say, okay, I'm putting that in a box over here. When it comes time for my case to go to court or whatever it is, I will have to open that box back up. But in the meantime, I'm going to going to start, being vocal for religious freedom as however I can, and encouraging other people to do the same. So I'm working with a group called First Liberty. It's a law firm out of Texas, and they've won like 9 Supreme Court cases for religious freedom specifically. So I love it. I just get to talk about Jesus, and I get to talk about encouraging people not to be afraid to stand up for what's right because they might lose their job. Like, listen, God will take care of you. I mean, it's so biblical. You think you need to go this way, and God's like, no, I want you to do this over here, and He's going to provide. So don't be afraid. That's what the enemy wants, and that's what all of the corrupt, money hungry officials want. They want us to be scared so they can control us. That's why tyrannical governments get rid of religious people in the beginning, because we're willing to say, no, we don't answer to you. We answer to God. So just encouraging people to not be afraid to live out their faith.
That's such an important part of what we're seeing go on in society right now. I think some people that didn't click for them yet how much the government and everything was taking over our freedoms during that time period. And maybe it clicks for more people now, but you standing up against that in that moment, it wasn't just for you. That was, standing up for all the people that felt the way that you did, even the ones that got their religious exemptions. That's still standing up for them because they could have been in the same boat you were in. And I think people, especially when you can use that religious exemption and say, I'm not doing this because of my faith, people will do the separation of church and state, which they have that completely misconstrued because it's actually to protect the church, not the state. But they don't recognize that we're standing up for the freedom of everybody. We're standing up for the freedom of, like you said, the people that disagree with us. And sometimes, like you said, they're not going to stand up to these things because they don't want to lose their job. But because they don't want to sacrifice their job, they're sacrificing their freedom, and it's only going to affect their kids and their grandkids down the line. And so I'm so grateful that you were bold enough and held strong to your convictions, and you were like, no, like, this is what I'm going to do. This is nonsense. Because it was. So now we're a couple years out of that. But something that's been popping up lately, and maybe you don't even think about it this much because you said you had to kind of put it away and put this aside, but we have had now all these things coming out with Fauci and saying, oh, the schools weren't supposed to be shut down that long, and oh, the masks weren't really a thing that worked. How is that something where you just are like, I just have to give it to God and not get angry? Is that something like you've been diving into and being like, finally here, told you guys? Like, how are you feeling with all of that kind of coming out?
Yeah, I have to give that to God.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and also nobody likes it when you say, I told you so. Like, nobody. So I really do take it very seriously to maintain. Most of the time, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this because I can be real snarky, but most of the time it's like to maintain that integrity of what we are supposed to be Christ-like and love people, because it's not loving to be like, I told you so. See, look at all this. We were right. It's like, I know, but they weren't in the same situation. They didn't have the same discernment that we had about it. And that's not their fault. And it's so divisive. As stuff like this coming out. Does it feel good to see it? Oh, it feels good. It feels so good. For sure. And I'm like, oh, my husband and I are just like, something else came out. Oh my gosh. Right. Like, it's just all these things, but to just say, okay, I still have my goals. I still have my eye on where I'm supposed to be going, to not get distracted by all of that. You can get so distracted by all that. Right. But I just, it is nice when people go that I know did not agree with my decision. They're like, can you believe that? And I'm like, I can't believe that you lost your job. And like, they're saying it didn't matter now. I'm like, yeah. But I have to say, like, I'm still very connected with a lot of people who lost their job or in the same position as me, and they're still devastated. It's still there are people who haven't been employed because of mental health crisis, and they had to move and they lost their house and it's a mess. So to say, oh, it's fine now, it's like, no. There is an absolute train wreck that they left behind them with all this. I just happen to be like, I am not willing to give up in my fight. I'm going to make it work. Even if we almost moved out of state because I couldn't easily find a job here in California. Ended up homeschooling my kids. So my goal is to mitigate like all of the risk factors, if you will, to control in my life as much as possible. And because we still have enough freedoms in America, I'm still able to do that. And it's amazing.
Yeah. And so homeschooling your kids, you're doing that on top of now you're kind of doing your dietitian work with women. How is the balancing of that and even the switch of that from being a mom that was going in and being a nurse every day and doing that to all of a sudden now you're finding yourself in that new switch and that new career? Especially, I think that's could be good for women to hear from you on that. Women sometimes are like, I have this set career because it's going to allow me to do this as a mother and none of it can get messed up because then I don't know how I'm going to continue on being a good mother, a wife, having your career. So how have you pushed through switching to that?
I, again, like keeping my eye focused on my goals, right? I'm like, okay, I don't want to move. I don't feel called to move. Okay. So what are my options for work? I did work in a clinic right after COVID and the money is just not there. It's just, and so I'm like, I'm away from my kids. I'm making half what I made at the hospital. Like this is not sustainable. And so just praying about, God, what do you want me to use? How do you want me to use my skills so that I can be around for my family? My husband's like, again, a fireman, his schedule's crazy. So, I decided this is going to give me the most opportunities. It's not going to be pretty. I mean, starting a business is not pretty. Like I'll just say anyone else, but it is absolutely worth it. It is so, because I am my own boss and I get to teach women. I get to use my skills and my knowledge as a clinician in a way that's actually helping people, because the hospital and you going to see the doctor, that is not the place for education. That is not the place for support. They aren't set up for that. They're set up for, these are your labs. This is the medication you should take. I'll see you in 6 months and see if it worked. Not the like, hey, did you know that there are simple ways that you can adjust your lifestyle and nutrition and drastically, reduce your symptoms of hormone imbalance and start losing weight, have more energy and all that. So I would just say for any women out there that are thinking about, or men too, like, okay, career change. Listen, if you feel called to it, you're going to make it happen. You just have to decide. It's like sink or swim. I just burned my ships. Like I had no options. I went all in. And when you're all in, it's not pretty, but you just make it happen and you just don't give up.
Yeah, I think that's something sometimes our society lacks right now, the hard work to get it there. And so as long as you can see, like you said, your goals and know if I want to get to here, I got to get this done. But with that, you're helping women a lot right now with, like you said, hormones and losing weight. I want to dive into that because even with myself, like I mentioned earlier, I have Kaiser. They're not the best when it comes to women's health, I don't believe. And that's just my own personal beliefs. I have hypothyroidism and pushed and advocated for myself for years. And their whole thing was, oh, well, do you work out enough? Do you work out 150 minutes a week? And that's when I said, I run 6 to 7 miles a day and I lift weights and then I'll take a day or two off and I eat all the things, like the right things and all that. And so like you said, it was let's get your lab tests and then come back in 6 months. And because the lab tests matched their score, they're like, sorry, there's nothing we can do to help you. So I eventually went to the holistic doctor route and got on everything I needed. And it helped literally change my life. But women don't understand how much hormones and all of that play a role. So talk about, I guess, how you work with women on that journey.
Yeah, it's I started down the weight loss journey because that for me, like that was, coming out of like starting a new business. I was like, this is where I can make a direct impact, start building a business. And all of the things that you need to build a foundation, healthy body, that's what you need for weight loss. That's also what you need for hormone balance. And I was like, all of my clients have hormone imbalances and they're all getting better because of the processes we're putting in place. So I kind of, my focus is still on weight loss, but I have clients that don't need to lose weight and their hormones are out of whack. Like I just had a client the other day who has a daughter too, who's just started her period. They're terrible. And I said, girl, I go take her through the same things that I take you through. Like, let's hit, do we have the pillar, the nutrition in place? Are we balancing our blood sugar? How's she moving her body? How's her stress? How's her sleep? What about toxic products is she using? Right? Like the same things. I have daughters. One of them is, probably going to start her period the next few years. Teaching her about her body and that all these things affect it. It's not just like, oh yeah, girls are supposed to have crazy periods. That's just, we're screwed. Like, that's just it. It's like, oh yeah, girls are always moody on their periods. Like actually not supposed to be like that. Mm-hmm. But because of all these other factors that we throw in there, it is. So my mission is to simplify that and to help people get consistent. Like with your low thyroid, for example, looking at all those pieces. So the way I explain it to people is like, imagine your body's a car. Okay. Mm-hmm. And your car has 4 tires. One of those tires is nutrition, which includes, gut health and blood sugar control. And then we've got movement. So what are we doing? How are we moving your body? Is that adding stress to your body or is that actually helping you? Right. So the movement's a tire. Then we've got sleep, which is so huge and way undervalued. Okay. So like, how are we going to improve your sleep wake cycle, your circadian rhythm, being in tune with the sun, the day and the light and the night, how much toxic light you're getting, all that plays into sleep. Right. And then stress management. And stress is probably the hardest one to address. You've got your physical stress, which could be from over exercising or under exercising, right? Your physical stress from lack of sleep, your physical stress from skipping meals, your physical stress from eating too many carbohydrates or not enough to fuel your body, right? And then we've got mental stress. So you've got these 2 huge things and people are like, well, I'm stressed. There's nothing I can do about it. It's like, well, some things you cannot do anything about, right? But where can we mitigate stress in your life and give your body the feedback that it's not being chased by lions? Okay, when we can give your body that feedback, it's going to work a whole lot better for you because your hormones are all doing this nice little dance. They're supposed to. They work in harmony together. They do this. As a woman, they go up and down throughout the month. Men are like this, which is why they don't have the same mood fluctuations that we do. But your hormones, and so if you're stressed, your body is going to focus on that and it really messes up your other hormones. And because your body's just trying to keep you alive. That's what it's trying to do. Everything inside of your body is trying to keep you alive. God made us that way. But in our culture, we have so much unmanaged stress. We're not sleeping well. We're not nourishing our body with the right foods. We're not moving consistently or we're moving in a way that's actually adding stress. So that's your car. Okay, that's the foundation. And then your mindset is the driver. So if your mindset's not right, like it's really hard to be consistent with these things. You're going to like end up in a ditch, right? Or if your driver's asleep at the wheel, or if they're so worried about things, like it's paralyzing. So you're not able to move forward. You're not going to get where you want to go. So I help people optimize all of those things in a way that is actually going to work in their life, right? With their busy schedule, foods they like to eat, their normal habits, really like taking a sports approach to it. You and I both played college soccer. So saying to like, let's leverage your strengths. Okay. I was a defender. What position did you play?
Center mid.
Center mid. Okay. See, I didn't have the ball control you had. So, but I'm really fast. Okay. And I'm aggressive. So like, let's leverage my strengths. Like those are my strengths, but we need to work on my touch. My touch was not so great. So that's what I worked the most on, right? Mm-hmm. So you leverage your strengths and adjust where you kind of need to. And that's how you can get consistent. Cause like, that's what's the struggle is with people is like, how do we do this for the rest of our life?
I think that's, especially for women, like you said, figuring out, I love that it's like figuring out your hormones. So like you said, the sleep, the stress, the what are you eating, and we have so long been told as a society, oh, your hormones are out of whack. Oh, you have a bad period. Okay, here's birth control. And it's like, that's just, I mean, everyone feels their own ways about birth control, but I just think there's not enough informed consent on birth control. Girls don't recognize what it's actually doing to their bodies. But I just love your approach of like, you are a human as a whole, and how can we get your body back on track? With that, I don't want to be like, give us all the tips and advice you know, if you want it, we'll chat where people can find you and go sign up to be a client and all that. But what are, I would say, a couple of like the top toxic things that you're like, if you are a girl, get this out of like your house or your life, like right now, like it affects your hormones too much?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, you guys, if you follow me on Instagram, I give away so much free information. Like, it's because a lot of you can take some information and run with it, and that's great. Like, if you can just take my information and run with it, you don't need to work with me. But then for those people who need more one-on-one assistance and want more accountability, they'll work with me. So I give away so much free information. I actually have a download. It's called my non-toxic gift guide, because there's like, everybody's always asking me about products and everything. You guys, I would say for women, it's perfume. Okay, there's something called endocrine disruptors. So they're in the products that we have, and our government allows them and it's crazy. So perfumes, so candles, your fabric softener, your detergent, plastics, what you have in your makeup, personal products like soap and body lotion, sunscreen. There's all these kind of things. And if you can imagine, here's a cell, okay? And it has a little receptor on your cell, okay? So here is where your hormone is supposed to go. All right, it goes right there. But we have endocrine disruptors, and they're taking up that parking spot. And so now your hormone can't actually do what it needs to do right there. So that often will lead to, especially in women, estrogen dominance. Okay, now this is like, it's not just one thing, right? It's coupled with stress, causes progesterone to be low, which causes estrogen to be high. Okay, which it's like we need these things to all be working in sync with each other. But and then you add toxic products to that, and then you add you're not sleeping enough, and then you add you're not controlling your blood sugar because no one ever taught you how. Right? You're drinking a sugar bomb for breakfast, and then you're skipping lunch, and then you're having another sugar bomb for dinner, and you're going to sleep, and you're not moving your body at all. Like this is why our bodies are firing back on us. And it's simple things that you can put in place. And that's just my message, people. It's not all about weight loss, right? If you can optimize your overall health, you're going to lose the weight. And people are like, no, it's all about calorie deficit. I'm like, well, yes. But if you can control your blood sugar, your cravings are going to plummet. Your energy level is going to go up. Your brain fog is going to go down. So you're going to feel more in control around food. And then you give you a little education. It's like, well, now you actually can say, look at a bowl of pasta and go, I actually don't need to finish that. I'm not that hungry. It's all of these things put together. It's not just one or the other, which is why mindset is so powerful. Because when you can have just a small perspective shift and empower someone with knowledge and support and consistency, like make it easy enough. Oh my gosh. It's like, it's powerful.
Yes, love that. As we kind of wrap up here, I do want to dive into real quick soccer, because we were kind of chatting about that in the beginning, and I love that we have that in common. There's a lot of girls that listen to this that they're athletes. They're struggling with the whole situation, what's going on with women's sports right now. But I would love to hear some advice from you for female athletes. It doesn't have to be on the whole men and women's sports issue, but I mean, you played at Florida State. You worked hard to get there and play college soccer. So any advice to the younger athletes listening and that have that dream of playing a college sport?
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I have 2 daughters. So it's like, to touch on that topic for a minute, I want to know where all the angry feminists are that paved the way for Title IX for me to be able to play there.
Mm-hmm.
All that angry feminist generation, I say that in jest, but like that came before me, I had those coaches that were like these gnarly women who fought tooth and nail for me to have the privilege to just no problem go to basically any school I wanted because of Title IX, all the funding, all the scholarships, right? They're silent in this. And I know it's a gender issue. I know it's a LGBTQ issue, like, because a lot of them are part of that a population anyway. So, saying they don't want to step on people's toes, but I'm like, come on, like, you got to see that the men are replacing the women, for and taking away all of our rights, like, just in the name of equity and, love, really. And so, I mean, from that issue, it's like it's heartbreaking that people don't see it as a bigger issue, right? Because they're just looking at it like, well, we want people to feel comfortable with themselves. Well, yeah, what cost though? Making me feel uncomfortable, making my kids feel uncomfortable. So, I just encourage younger women to not be the crazy ones. Like, I'm not saying don't advocate for your rights, but like, be so calm and logical that it's so obvious who is not thinking clearly here, right? I mean, like, I just encourage you guys to just to be the strong voice for our generation, and just not tolerating it at all, and not playing this game about this fictional thing that men can be women. Like, they can't. And the gender stuff is, as a nurse, I have such a hard time with thinking about how this is going to wreck people's physical bodies. Like the kids that are allowed to use the hormones and are doing the gender transitions with the permanent surgery. Like, it's heartbreaking to me, because those kids are being are not being advocated for by adults. It's child abuse, in my opinion. So, I mean, and these guys that are playing for women, they're not good on the men's teams. That's why they're coming to our teams. You don't see it the other way. We don't see women going to play for men, because that doesn't benefit them, right? It's all they're subpar male athletes that are coming to our space with their high levels of testosterone. Mm-hmm. Something else I want to say to if you're a female athlete, your body was, especially soccer, we were not created to abuse our body the way that we did in youth sports. Mm-hmm. It will negatively affect your female body eventually. And it did mine. I have PCOS, and I don't know if that's from years of, high adrenaline, and from years of over exercising and not knowing how to balance my blood sugar. They don't really know the cause of it, right? But just encouraging you guys, women, to find a gentler way of exercising. It doesn't have that. As an athlete, you can still get a great benefit and great workout without killing yourself. I didn't know how to work out unless I was working out till I puked after I played soccer. Like, I didn't understand that. But just that daily movement, walking, lifting weights, that is so powerful. And that will really, really help balance hormones and give you the tone to your body that you need without affecting you negatively, affecting your health.
That's so important, because, I mean, I know when you're playing a college sport, when you're training to one day hopefully make it to a college team, it really is like your body, like the sake of your body out the door. I mean, like you said, working out till you throw up. I mean, I remember the days of getting on the treadmill and being, how many times can I sprint at the highest speed the treadmill will go for 30 seconds and 15 seconds off? And, did it help me at my sore at the time? Yes, but not as much as taking care of my body ultimately would have, because then you do. I mean, I remember hitting my junior year of college and like being like, man, I feel like an old lady next to the freshman, and my body's like not recovering and bouncing back after one game like theirs are. And so I think that's so important. I mean, and then there's that balance of, you grow up playing a sport. I think especially soccer, it's such a high intensity sport. You're having to learn how to run fast, like quick little sprints, but you're also having to learn how to keep that stamina. It's a lot on your body. And you go into that stage of, oh, now I'm done with college soccer. I'm done with college sports. How do I train, like, just work out like a normal human being? And I went, like, I was like, soccer's over. I literally remember I had my senior soccer game. Some of like my hometown friends came up for it, played it, like, let's say it was a Friday. That Saturday afternoon, I had to be back at my parents' house for some family event. So that Saturday morning, I went to the gym at my parents' house and ran into some of my friends that came to watch my senior game. And they're like, you're not going to just take a day off? And I was like, I don't know how to. And so
Yeah.
having to find that rhythm of where now, like, I'll go do like Pilates and go on like a nice little slow jog. And I'm like, that, even a year ago, me, like 2 years being out of soccer, I had been like, no, like, you're going to get fat, all the things. And then realizing, like, no, this is actually a lot healthier for my body to not wake up at 5 a.m. and put it under this intense amount of stress right away. With that, too, I do want to dive into, and then we'll get wrapping up, but I want to dive into what we were talking about in the beginning with my kind of experience with soccer and the COVID angle. Because people, I think we have the group of people that just sat at home and kind of followed all the rules and got to just do school online and work online and all that, and didn't realize how much it affected the people that, like you didn't get to just go work online. You were in the hospital until the situation happened. And for soccer, I mean, I can't even imagine how bad it was for our bodies, but like we got that text of, hey, you're going home, you're getting kicked out of the dorms, like school's online, but keep training because we don't know when all of a sudden they're going to say you're coming back and you're going to have games. And so we were training. We would do like team Zoom calls of, hey, like keep up with this training, go do this outside your front yard, try to stick up to everything. And I remember getting a text. It looks like we're going to be back in about a month, but we'll have to wear masks. So maybe try going on runs by yourself with a mask on to get used to it. I literally laughed when I saw that text. Like, absolutely. No, I'm not. And mind you, at this point, like, I think we were like in July. Like, it is hot. I am running on the asphalt outside. Like, I'm not going to restrict my body from breathing when, you know, when you're practicing and doing those runs, sometimes at the end of it, you're already just trying to find any air to breathe without a mask over your face. But we then went down, though. We finally got to get back. Then the masks during fitness tests.
Oh,
like,
I just cannot. I just like, aren't you like those coaches? Like, aren't you embarrassed? Like, how little thought are you putting into this? But like, I know that they just were, you know, trying to stay open, right? Like they were just doing everything they could to get you guys to participate and qualify. But like, come on, like, let's use some logic here. There's just all of it out the window.
No, absolutely. And like I mentioned to you earlier, the school I went to, I'm so grateful for. They were so good about, I truly think, not falling for all the ideology. But unfortunately, it was like Newsom, the government, all the people are like, here's the rules. And everyone felt like their hands were tied. But yeah, logic was out the door. There was a while we got separated into 3 little groups. So the coach would have to do practice with 3 different groups.
Oh, wow.
And I got like in a different group than like one of my best friends. So I'm like, okay, you can go ahead and put us in different groups. So like if one group gets COVID, the other group's still good. But we're all going to go grab coffee with different people. Like it was just so insane.
The restaurant's my favorite, where you have to wear the mask until you get to your table and then you can take it off. And like you're sitting like 2 feet from another. I just stop. Like just stop. Yeah. I know. Well, I think that I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I think that the next time something like this happens, there's going to be more people that are going to go, we're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing that. There's still going to be, and basically all of them live on my street. There's still going to be people that are like, we have to follow the science. They listen to everything on CNN. I live in Southern California. So that's the demographic around here. We've got Ukraine flags flying. We've got science is real posters. We've got the LGBTQ, whatever. We got the whole thing. But I think there's going to be more people that are going to go, nope, we're not doing that. Nope. And I'm here for it. I'm super excited to see that and to see how, because I think as terrible as COVID was, it really made people change their perspective on some things in a good way. Like a lot of people have woken up to things and are less fearful of some things because we've been through that. So, you know, God's in control. He, at the end of the day, like he has totally got this. It's our job to show up and use the gifts he's given us to move the needle forward for his kingdom. So that's what I'm here for. And sounds like you are too. So I'm excited to follow all of your stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. You know, I was just talking with someone about this the other day because, again, being in Southern California, they were like, what's it like in California right now with everything? And
Sunny and chill. Besides that, yeah.
yeah. But like you said, I think COVID, they pushed it too far. They went a little too far. If they dialed it in a bit, they might have been able to trick more people for a round 2 of whatever comes next. But they pushed it too far, and people are like, nope, I'm not putting up with this again. And I think you see that remnant of people in California. You still see the California people that are going to fall in line and trust that the government's doing what's best for them and all of that. But you really see that remnant in California that we're like, we here in California, we're pushed too far and we're done. And so I'm kind of looking forward to what comes next too.
Have you ever heard from people that visit and they're like, you California people are different? Because other states, like, for example, if you live in a state that's more red, then people don't talk about stuff as much. There's not as many fighters because they don't have anything to fight. But out here, we're literally holding on to like every bit of freedom we have left with whatever we can hold on to, with whatever strength we have left, because it's California. We're losing our rights like day by day with our corrupt government in place. So yeah, we're different out here.
Yes, no, absolutely. So with that, what is one final word, anything, whether it's something we've already touched on or not, that you want to leave with the listeners?
Oh, I love this so much. Okay, so with my coaching, I really encourage people to let God speak to them and to grow into their purpose. So my question for your listeners is, you were created in the image of God, but what were you created for? And that doesn't have to be a job, right? It doesn't have to be like the traditional sense, but think about that. Like, God created you specifically for a purpose. He only made one of you, and he made you different. And you've been given gifts that other people don't have. How are you using those gifts? Like, what were you created for? And when you start to step into that and when your actions start to line up with your values and the purpose that God has for your life, there is no more sense of peace. That doesn't mean that your life will be easy all the time, but that is the ultimate, you will find ultimate peace and purpose. And that's the only way to live. So, just encouraging you guys to do that. And if you're looking to follow me so you can hear all my shenanigans and get some nutrition tips and weight loss and hormone balance tips on the way, Instagram, you can find me at the Tori Jensen. And then my website's torijensen.org if you want to apply to work with me.
Amazing. Well, for all y'all listening, I'll put that in the caption too, so you can make sure you can go follow Tori. I mean, I have a blast following you because I get a lot of helpful information, but also a good laugh here and there at some of your posts. So it's a blast. But Tori, thank you so much for being bold and standing in truth and for your faith. But thank you also for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.